Ladies and gentlemen, we made it. Steelers football is officially back with them traveling to Jacksonville to take on the new look Jaguars team under Liam Cohen in the preseason opener. I'm extremely fired up about this one. So I want to jump on here, talk through some things, talk about some players, some things I'm keeping an eye on during the game on Saturday. Before I jump into that, if you guys could make sure you like, subscribe, drop me a comment. All that stuff greatly helps the algorithm. And I appreciate it. It allows me to bring you guys even more in-depth content throughout the season. It sounds like Jacksonville is going to be playing their starters, which is pretty fun to some degree, at least. Pittsburgh's rested a bunch of guys. I feel like that's really to no one's surprise. It's typically just how they do business, especially for the preseason opener. Just a real quick rundown on who is not going to play. Rogers, DK, Janu, Fryermoose, Sayamalo, Warren, Slade, JPJ, Jalen Ramsey, Deshaun Elliott, Patrick Queen, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, Chris Boswell. So, not any surprise necessarily on that list for me. On the bright side, though, it does leave a bevy of playing time for younger players that need more reps, honestly, and potentially open up some opportunities for some guys that are currently lower down on the depth chart to get some valuable reps and hopefully make a push for the 53-man roster, which we're going to talk about all of that. Specific players I'm looking for, some sleepers, things like that. While the result of like preseason games doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, in terms of like wins and losses, anything like that. These games are useful, especially for like people like me and for you guys that are interested in like scheme and X's and O's and things like that, because they are useful in terms of identifying like base philosophies on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Personnel usage, specific passing concepts, under center shotgun splits, coverage mechanisms, despite there being like no true game planning going on from either coaching staff. But I think just like first and foremost for me, the coaching staff is going to want to see like a clean operation across the board. And I think like going back to the preseason contest last year, I think it was Houston that they opened up against. It was just a really sloppy affair. It was a lot of penalties. They muffed a snap or botched a snap, QC exchange. And that like you don't want to see those things. Just in general, you want to stay on schedule, get as many valuable reps in realistic down and distances as possible when you're on offense, because you're not going to get any better or any good looks. Nothing good's going to come out of being in 3rd and 15, right? So kind of obvious, but just some things. I want to see a clean operation across the board, offensive, special teams, defense. And then, defensively, really just communication is a big thing that I'll be watching for. I'm sure that you guys have probably seen it, but they're giving Peyton Wilson the green dot on Saturday, which I think is good experience for him. Definitely a unique situation to kind of put a second-year player into without Queen being on the field. I think it's a good thing, especially, what happens down the line if like Queen misses a game or they need to turn it over to somebody else. He already has some experience doing that at the NFL level. So I think that's definitely a smart decision by the coaching staff. You don't want to see a bunch of, explosive plays allowed over the top. You want to see clean coverage checks and things like that. Cohen's run game is very diverse. We're not going to get too deep into the weeds in terms of like, game planning, like scheme and things like that, because, there's no point in like scouting opponents and like setting like this. But Cohen's run game is very diverse. It's a lot of misdirection. They flood you with a lot of gap centric concepts. They run a lot of like counter and power from gun. And I think that's going to give the Steelers a really good look, because it's definitely completely opposite from what the defense has been seeing in camp, right? Because it's very different from Arthur Smith's like wide zone and boot kind of offense. So I think it'll be a good test for them. And I'm sure the players are excited just to go up against like somebody that's not wearing the black and gold, right? So it's our first kind of real, I guess, eye test of them playing in live action with full pads, full hitting, everything like that going on. But as far as players I'm most excited about watching, I really think it just starts with Troy Fautanu. I know this is very on brand for me, because if you follow the channel for a long time or followed me in any capacity, you know that I'm really high on this player. But I just thought it was interesting. TJ Watt talked about just trying to test him with as many moves as possible, outside, inside power, things like that, just so that the youngster could really regain trust back in that surgically repaired knee. Really unfortunate that he missed all of his rookie season, and I definitely acknowledge there's going to be bumps in the trajectory. He's not going to be perfect coming out, I'm sure, but I hope we get some one-on-ones with Trayvon Walker, a powerful edge rusher with some really good size. Just really question like, how does he look physically up against NFL competition? Would love to see him get him out in space, like on screens and things like that. Screen game was a big problem really when I was in training camp. It sounds like it's been that way throughout the time in Latrobe. But, I just want to see, him look the part physically. And then just like, I think in general, if you're painting an optimistic picture of like what this offense could look like this fall, it really centers around Fautanu's like development, what he can bring really from day one. Cause I think he's got the highest ceiling of any of their offensive players. So I'm still incredibly bullish on him. So hopefully he has a good performance. I'll be pretty much locked in on a snap by snap basis until he comes out of the game. And then kind of flipping over to the other side of the trenches, the Steelers wanted to get more physical this offseason. I think that was a clear kind of prerogative for them going into the draft, going into free agency. Taking Derrick Harmon in the first round was definitely a reflection of that after, Baltimore was able to kind of dismantle them in the run game last postseason. But, I think Harmon, the biggest thing is like, we know what a first round pick should look like in a preseason setting like this. Not that it's going to be consistent on a snap to snap basis, but you want to see flashes, right, of that kind of talent. And I think for Harmon, just interested to see like how he's winning against the passer, like how he holds up. I think he's got really strong hands, and he's going to be able to hold the point of attack in the run game. But this run game is going to be different than what he's seen so far in camp. So I'm interested to see. It sounds like they're going to be playing their first team offensive line at least to some degree. So again, should be a good test for Harmon to get out there and make some nice plays. I'm kind of interested to see too. Maybe they don't want to roll this out yet, but I think Harmon is a guy that is going to be a really effective like stunt player. And I know they've worked a little bit of that throughout training camp. Granted, like TJ Watt hasn't necessarily taken a ton of team reps and he's not going to be out there tonight. But I do think that is a way for the Steelers to be a little bit more unique in their fronts and how they're getting after the passer. So getting Harmon free on a stunt, whether as the masher or the looper, would be interesting to me just to see. But I'm just excited. We know what it should look like, right? So excited about that. Roman Wilson, I think I've been very adamant that just about my concerns about the wide receiver room, not just like before I went to training camp, but like since I came back. The good news is that it sounds like Roman Wilson had a better week this week, has begun kind of establishing a connection with Aaron Rodgers. I thought it was really insightful that Rodgers told the media that he thinks Roman's talented, but he's in his head a little bit. And I think that is really interesting for a young player. You got to look at where his confidence could be at after a rookie season that was essentially wiped away because of injuries. He couldn't really get back on the moving train after that. But I think from the coaching staff perspective, it would be a really good idea for them just to get his confidence up. Like, can we get him? Like, obviously, when they took Roman, I was talking about like just like the speed slot kind of element to his game, his ability to stretch the field vertically, but also stretch it horizontally on all these like deep crossers and things like that. That's really what he did a lot of at Michigan. Can they get him going like with a design touch on like the first or second drive of the game, just to get his confidence up? Even if it's just one target, things like that, it would just get him in like rhythm and get him in good spirits. And I think, for the Steelers, again, kind of reach their potential on offense, they're going to need other auxiliary pieces to kind of step up to the plate and complement DK Metcalf. Can Roman be that guy? Without DK playing tonight, and obviously Calvin's still out with an injury, it sounds like he's going to be out a little bit longer. They need some of these guys to step up. How Roman faces press coverage, the deployment of him, like what his route tree looks like. Is he playing mostly inside, outside? He's a guy that I honestly would like to see play a lot. Like, I would have no qualms with them playing him the entire first half if they chose to go that direction, just because I think he needs the reps. He didn't get to play in the preseason last year. So I'm very interested to see how he looks like. He will definitely be somebody that I'll be checking in on throughout the film once we get that. So I think the next, like staying on course of the offense, like just Caleb Johnson. We kind of know what to expect with Caleb Johnson as a runner. Like the reason why we all kind of were really excited about his fit within Arthur Smith's system is, Iowa's offense was very, under center, one back heavy, where they ran a lot of outside zone, a lot of mid zone and things like that. That made him such a good scheme fit. I think the biggest question for me is, his usage this season is really going to come down to like what his development looks like in terms of like impact of the pass game. I'd like to see him get like a check down or two just to show off the hands. That wasn't something like pass protection and catching the ball in the backfield were not things that Iowa's offense asked him to do a lot of, just because they were so run heavy. But in order to, get on the field in the NFL, like that's the number one thing that prevents guys from getting reps early in their career. Is just like they can't be trusted in pass pro. So you want to see him be assignment sound and all of his scan protections, and then just like bring the physicality. I think that he was better in that in backs on backers. It sounds like, he's been better as camp went along. I wouldn't necessarily say that it was like a strength for him, at least in the days that I was there, but it's going to be a work in progress. But you want to see him continue on that upward trajectory. And I'm excited about that. I think it'll be really cool to see him run the ball. And it would be really cool if like he went out there and, popped a couple explosive runs just to prove to people that he does indeed have the speed that I think he does, at least to generate those explosive plays. But bottom line, man, like I just want to see a really sound performance in the pass game, catching the ball if it's thrown to him, and then also just like picking up on his pass protection rules. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be very important throughout the game. And then just kind of sticking with the rookie class, these preseason games are such a good opportunity for these guys to kind of show, like, give us like a good first impression. I think Jack Sawyer has made a good first impression on the coaching staff, and this Steelers edge room is so incredibly deep. You look at Watt, Highsmith, and then even Nick Herbig. Like, it's going to be difficult, really, for Sawyer to carve out like significant playing time in the regular season anyway. So I think getting him as many reps as in the preseason as possible is going to be really, really valuable for his own development. I think he's been really good against the run, at least in the practices that I was there, running plays down from behind, resetting the line of scrimmage. I saw him ragdoll tight ends a couple different times. I'm just really curious on like what the pass rush plan looks like. Like, how does he try to win? Seemed like it was a lot of like inside moves, at least in the days that I was there at camp. But want to see if like he can generate any knockback, like with some speed to power rushes, and just like in general how he's trying to go about like those passing down situations. It sounds like, again, like seeing him against a guy like Anton Harrison, a third-year pro, a guy with good athletic tools. I think that would be a good barometer to see where he's at physically. Does he have the springs to get off the line of scrimmage and threaten that outside shoulder? I think that would be the big thing that I'm looking for, is just like how he looks athletically in comparison to NFL caliber tackles. I would expect, the tackle depth is pretty much like an oxymoron around the NFL. Like, we just don't have enough quality offensive tackles. So if they do throw a backup in there, I want to see Sawyer make some plays, whether that's in the run game or the pass game. I think that he's talented enough to at least do that. And then another guy that's been making kind of waves throughout camp has been Y.A. Black. He's been getting his paws on a lot of batted passes at the line of scrimmage. That is something that the Steelers coaching staff really preaches. I think that it is a legitimate skill. I think that a lot of people, including myself, were kind of a little bit skeptical on them playing him at 3 technique instead of playing at nose, even though that's kind of like what he did for the Hawkeyes defense as well. But, most of the batted passes that you see at the line of scrimmage are through the B gap. And if the Steelers want to play a lot of like man coverage, you got to think of like what kind of routes that you're going to see versus man, right? You're going to get a lot of crossers, you're going to get a lot of slants, some shallows, things like that. Well, those are going to come over the middle of the field. I think having a guy with that amount of length is going to be a good asset, even if he doesn't necessarily physically profile as somebody that's going to be an impactful rusher. But what I do expect really from day one is him be able to collect blocks, hold his ground at the point of attack. That is something that I'm going to be looking for. Pad level is going to be something that's going to be big with him as well. So just kind of want to see some flashes in the run game. Maybe he can get a batted pass or two, but it definitely sounds like he's went from somebody who's going to be like maybe competing for a roster spot to legitimately maybe working himself into the rotation, especially with some of the injuries they've had. Like Dean Lowry's already down for the entire season. Maybe Black can come in and get himself some playing time in that regard. So I'm excited about that. He should get plenty of reps in a setting like this too. Kind of going back to like the edge depth with Sawyer being like a rundown first type of edge player. I do think like he's going to get a lot of playing time tonight just because like the first 3 guys are out, but also DeMarvin Leal was hurt in practice, I think yesterday, the day before. So, I mean, they don't even have a ton of bodies to throw out there. So, I mean, there's like a legitimate chance that he plays a ton of snaps, which will be really good to kind of gauge where he's at. And then just kind of some sleepers that I'm interested in seeing too. Just Rock Taylor. He's made a lot of, I feel like headlines. It seems like every day I wake up on social media and people are, really hyping him up. He's a guy with really good size. He's been good on back shoulders. He's really established a really good rapport with Will Howard, who unfortunately we won't get to see probably this preseason just because he ended up, I think, with a pinky injury. Sounds like he's going to be out a couple weeks, which is a really bummer for the watchability standpoint for Steelers preseason games. You always want to see those rookie quarterbacks. But, Rock, can he continue to make plays? I think the biggest thing for me is just consistency. Like, he's had some really good reps. He's also had a couple drops, at least in the practices that I was there on. But, we're all looking for somebody to step up in the receiver room, right? Like, so can Rock be that guy? Can he push for a roster spot? Is he getting like any type of work on special teams? I think that would be a good sign for his chances to make it, but we'll see. I mean, I will just caution people, like, we have seen this over the years with the wide receiver position in general. Sometimes the training camp darlings do come from the wide out spot for a couple reasons, but not to get too deep in the weeds on that. But Sebastian Castro is another guy that I'm kind of looking forward to. It seems like Chuck Clark is being given enough playing time to make me think, at least playing time with the ones, to make me think that he's probably going to make the roster, like to the point where he might even be a lock at this point. Having said that, they're probably only going to keep four safeties, Killebrew being like the quote unquote fourth guy. We all know he's like mostly just a special teamer, but Castro could be a really nice like prime practice squad candidate. He's somebody that I would anticipate landing on that list as of right now, but he's made some splash plays, getting his hands on the football. He had a one-handed interception off Howard a couple days ago. And then just like I thought that in general in the team run periods, he's been pretty reliable as a tackler too. So he's got some slot experience. I do agree that, him being at safety is probably strong safety is probably the best thing for him at the next level. But again, another guy that you're kind of looking to see like how he stacks up athletically. Didn't test the best coming out of Iowa, but he's got a lot of experience. So I definitely don't think it's going to be too big of a transition mentally for him changing positions because he did play some in the back end. But yeah, I'll be watching Castro, and then kind of like the super duper sleeper, I guess, that I'm watching for is Deshaun Jameson. He's drafted a couple years ago out of Texas. He's an undersized guy. He's got solid technique and press coverage. I just thought like when I was watching like one-on-ones that he's still really twitchy, but I just like the like feistiness that he shows, not just in coverage, but also like in the run game. I just thought he was around the ball a decent amount. So, this would be a good opportunity for him to get some playing time. And I think that, he's a guy who has played on the outside. He also has been playing a little bit in the slot too. So I think that there will be a lot of reps to come from him, especially with the top three cornerbacks probably not playing at all. Then who knows how much we see some of the other veteran guys in this equation. So it should be a really fun game, man. Like I'm really, really excited about seeing what the Jags look like. I think that the Trevor Lawrence storyline with Liam Cohen's really interesting. And every offseason I try to go back and watch who's the best offenses in the league? Like, what are they doing schematically? Like, what trends can we pick up on as far as like what's working in the NFL, what's not? And Cohen's Bucks offense was a really big revelation, I felt like, in the NFL last year. I mean, they were one of the top like five offenses in the league, and they did that. Anytime you construct that type of offense, like without like what I would think of as like a game changer at quarterback, I think Baker Mayfield's a solid player, but definitely not somebody that you would put in that elite or like franchise caliber of quarterbacks. But anytime you construct that offense, especially like with the run game being what it was, like super efficient, I just think that Cohen's offense is gonna be really exciting to watch this year at Jacksonville. And then the Travis Hunter of it all, how he gets included. Brad Thomas Jr., I thought he was the best rookie wide receiver last year as well. So there's a lot to look forward to. Jacksonville's defense was horrendous last year, but again, they pretty much cleaned house. New GM, new coaching staff. There's not really a lot of, I feel like buzz around them, but they could be a team that has like a wide range of kind of outcomes, in my opinion. So this will be a good test for the Steelers. As always, I will be back in some capacity. I'll, of course, have my Dudes and Duds column following the game immediately after that you can find on SteelersNow.com. And then I'll be back on here to do some sort of like recap video, whether that's like late Saturday night, early Sunday, something like that, just to kind of give my biggest takeaways, specific player performances, just observations from the game, things like that. But I'm really excited to get back in the swing of things, man. It's been ever since I got back from camp, just those like competitive juices have been flowing for me. And I've just been really anxious all week just to get back to some sort of real football, but a lot to be excited about, man. Like I know preseason can be a little shaky sometimes, but it is fun. I think have fun with all their overreactions and interacting with other fans on social media. I'm excited to do all that. So on your way out, just again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn notifications on, and drop me a comment. Let me know who you guys are most excited to see play on Saturday night. It should be a really fun time, but I will check you guys very soon.